This is live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and coming up in the next hour. Ursula von der Leyen wins second term as EU Commission President, pledges to strengthen the EU economy, police and border agencies tackle migration and climate change. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls for deeper cooperation on Ukraine and Europe's problems at a meeting of the European political community of more than 40 nations at Blenheim Palace, distances himself from the previous Conservative government. Massive protests over quota in government jobs rock Bangladesh. Government shuts down mobile internet. India issues an advisory, asks students in Dhaka to avoid local travel and minimize movement. India's Home Minister Amit Shah launches Manas helpline for reporting narcotics crimes. It will allow any person to tip off the NCB about crimes. And Surya Kumar Yadav named India's new T20 captain as BCCI announces squad for T20 and ODI series against Sri Lanka. Well, it's official now. Ursula von der Leyen will continue as European Commission boss. The European Parliament has re-elected her for another 5 years as European Commission President, choosing stability and continuity for the EU's most powerful institution and the bloc. Hailing from centre-right European People's Party, she won 401 votes in a secret ballot, which was well above the 361 vote mark she needed to be elected. There were 284 votes in opposition and about 18 absentations and 7 votes declared invalid. Tripti Tripathi of DD India gets us more details in this report.
Here is the result of the vote. Members voting 707. Majority of component members 360. Votes in favour 401.
And with this announcement, Ursula von der Leyen is elected for another 5 years as European Commission President. Members of the European Parliament backed her bid with 401 votes in her favour and 284 against in a secret ballot.
I will aim for an equal share of men and women at the college table. I'm very grateful, of course, to the platform, EPP, Renew and SD, but I'm also very grateful to the Green Group to have supported me. We had intensive exchanges on all the topics, and it's a good sign that at the very end, obviously, they were convinced to support me.
Von der Leyen had the backing of the three mainstream pro-EU groups, the centre-right European People's Party, the Socialists and the Liberals of Renew. The decision came despite resistance from Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who voted against her second term. Congratulations from world leader Sport on her reappointment as the European Commission President. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also extended greetings. Sharing a picture on social media, he said that it is a clear sign of her ability to act in the European Union. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer also congratulated Ursula and said that he is looking forward to working closely with the European Union. Von der Leyen has pledged to create a defence union and stay the course on Europe's green transition. She has also promised a raft of climate policies, including a legally binding EU target to cut emissions by 90% by 2040.
2035 climate neutrality target for cars. That target stays. And we have to create predictability for investors and manufacturers and, of course, customers. Getting there will require, indeed, a technology-neutral approach in which e-fuels have to play a role.
She also pledged to support Ukraine for as long as it takes in its conflict with Russia. The German has also promised to create new dedicated European commissioners for housing, defence, EU enlargement and the Mediterranean region, with a remit to tackle migration. Von der Leyen also proposed a Europe-wide air defence system and cyber protection as projects of common European interest that could attract EU funding. Tripti Tripathi's report for DD India.
Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has called on Thursday for closer cooperation in Europe to advance support for Ukraine and tackle the continent's most pressing problems like illegal migration, climate change and energy security. Opening a meeting of the European Political Community, or EPC, for more than 40 nations at Blenheim Palace, Starmer also made his bid for a reset in post-Brexit ties with the European Union. DD India correspondent Raghav Kumar Jha reports.
It was a busy day in politics for Keir Starmer, hosting European Political Community Summit at Blenheim Palace in Woodstock, England, which brought together more than 40 European nations at the birthplace of Winston Churchill. Distancing himself from the previous Conservative government's policy, Starmer sought to reset Britain's post-Brexit relationship with the European Union and reaffirmed support for Ukraine. He called for closer cooperation in Europe to advance support for Ukraine and tackle the continent's most pressing problems, including illegal migration, climate change and energy security.
We want to work with all of you to reset relationships, rediscover our common interest and renew the bonds of trust and friendship that brighten the fabric of European life. And the task is urgent, because our security is on the line. Every day Ukraine fights to protect not just the Ukrainian people, but the European people.
European leaders welcomed Starmer's defence cooperation plans. French President Emmanuel Macron said that this is a great opportunity for building a new relationship with the UK.
I'm very happy, and this is a great opportunity for a reset and a lot of perspective.
Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said that Europe will have to ensure that Ukraine does not lose against Russia.
We have said for 2.5 years now that we cannot let Ukraine lose. I think we need to be open about the facts here. In order for Ukraine not to lose, Ukraine needs to win this war.
Ukrainian President Zelensky thanked European leaders for their support in war against Russia.
We have stopped the Russian advance on Kharkiv. Period. Putin has sacrificed tens of thousands of his citizens, but has achieved nothing significant. This was made possible by the bravery of our warriors and the bravery of our partners, who have lifted limitations on the use of Western weapons along our border.
The one-day meeting of the group, set up after Russia's military operation in Ukraine in 2022, provided Britain's new leader an important opportunity to push for closer defence cooperation, especially before the possible election of Donald Trump, who suggests that Europe must do more to protect its own security. Raghav Kumar Jha reports for DD India.
From London Live, we have Stuart Smith of DD India joining us. Stuart, interesting to see Prime Minister Starmer sitting next to Zelensky. And how is this really seen in terms of reset and realignment when it comes to Britain's relationship with the continent and his interventions? The first major event after assuming a premiership of UK.
Yeah, it's really a special meeting because while there are the leaders of the European Union nations that meet frequently, a pan-European conference like this, with 45 European leaders, is really unusual. And for Keir Starmer, a new Prime Minister only in the job for 2 weeks, to be able to host such an event, that's a real boon for the UK. And it also allowed Keir Starmer to effectively deal with the most pressing regional geopolitical issues without needing even to leave the UK. So it allowed him to talk to President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to reassure him that despite the new government, there will be no change in support for Ukraine, and even to sign an agreement, bilateral agreement between London and Kiev that guarantees Ukraine's defence and military industry. As part of that conversation, as well as trying to reassure Volodymyr Zelensky that UK support would continue, the UK leader, Keir Starmer, was also trying to indeed reset relations after the chaotic EU-UK relationship that came after the 2016 EU referendum that led to the UK leaving the European Union and all the political shenanigans that came after that. Keir Starmer is trying to portray a sense of stability and also a sense of wanting to work with the European Union much more closely. So while the UK is not going to rejoin, to have a working relationship where trust is something that connects them. That would allow, for example, Keir Starmer to make progress on immigration, a hot issue here in the UK, which requires, he says, the assistance of European leaders to help tackle the problem at source.
Having said that, we've seen how European political community leaders have reaffirmed consistently their support for Ukraine in this setting also. But if you could just shed some light as far as other key shared concerns are concerned, such as migration and energy, and how this is also seen as an opportunity for Prime Minister Starmer in terms of drumming up support from his European allies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's nothing better for an international leader to be able to meet the most important key players in person. And with that, with the attempt to build trust, if that is developed, and looking at the way leaders reacted to Keir Starmer earlier today, it seems like he is developing that rapport. That would allow him to, for example, encourage EU leaders to push for a UK-EU returns agreement that would allow the UK to send asylum seekers who come to the UK illegally, not to Rwanda like the previous government was suggesting, but back to the countries from which they came, whether it would be France, the Netherlands or Belgium, for example. It would also, hopefully, Keir Starmer wants, allow the UK to access the European Union's fingerprint database of those asylum seekers, helping to make the UK more secure to find out who these people are. But then when it comes to other areas like energy and climate change, a priority for this government, which is hoping to reach net zero electricity by the end of 2030, it will need to work with European countries to take, for example, energy from France through interconnectors and other countries like Norway that produces hydropower. So there's a whole host of ways, if Keir Starmer can get this relationship right, to leverage the relationship with the European Union. Yeah, absolutely. And leveraging this relationship with European Union along with agenda setting ahead of the meeting. Remember, he promised UK would have a more, and I quote, active and greater convening role on the world stage, quote unquote. And he needs to deliver on that promise. So basically, you're also reaching out to your own constituencies back home when it comes to UK's big share of relevance in the EU settings. Yeah, absolutely right. This is not only a signal for the European leaders, it's a signal to the domestic audience as well. In the first 2 weeks, Keir Starmer showing that he is an international leader from Washington as well at the NATO summit, and also saying that he's tackling the issues that Britons care about, notably immigration. All right, Stuart, many thanks for joining us live from London and putting this in perspective. Thank you. And still to come on DD India News Hour. This is what we have for you coming up next. We get you all about the European Central Bank decisions on interest rates. And China's third plenary session ends without major economic plans. We get you more on the UNICEF report, which presents a flawed comparison with countries without taking into consideration India's population and high vaccination coverage.
As the world gears up for the biggest sporting extravaganza, Olympics 2024, we at DD India are all set to bring you reports, reactions and all the latest action from Ground Zero. Watch DD India's super exclusive show, Cheer for Bharat. Only on DD India from July the 22nd at 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT. Get ready to cheer for Indian athletes at the Paris Olympics 2024.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. And let's talk about our top story. DD India correspondent Kadir Alex joins us live from Brussels to talk about the consolidation of support. Hi Alex, Akil here. The consolidation of support, the kind of support that we have seen for Ursula von der Leyen. Though she did not really win this with a huge margin, but you know, we have been tracking the story very, very closely. There was a point when we both spoke about she's in a tight spot. So finally, how did this vote come through?
Well, certainly less tight than we had expected and that we were speaking about not that long ago. Just yesterday, you and I were talking about how Ursula von der Leyen had a tight vote ahead of her, but now it seems she's done it by quite some margin. 41 votes, she needed 361, she got 401, so really quite a big margin, more than expected. We know that some members of her own coalition didn't vote for her presidency, but that the Green Party, crucially with more than 50 MEPs, came in behind her to support her. So that means that Ursula von der Leyen has a mandate from the democratically elected European Parliament, and that certainly will make a difference. It is more than expected, but the way she got there will also prove challenging because she made a lot of promises to a lot of people, and those promises and those parties don't necessarily align. And so that will make the next 5 years perhaps a little bit more complicated for Ursula von der Leyen.
Having said that, it seems that the bloc has actually chosen you know, stability and continuity amid all the uncertainty and the polarization we've seen. That's, you know, the kind of war that is actually knocking at the doorsteps of European countries.
Yeah, you're right. We heard that from Roberta Metsola, the president of the European Parliament, re-elected just a couple of days ago. She said the choice of Ursula von der Leyen is one of continuity and stability. And that was also a big argument as part of Ursula von der Leyen's campaign. She said, look at the political instability in the United States. Look at the impact the Chinese economy not doing so well is having on the European economy. Look at the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East. Look at all these challenges that we have to face together. Surely now is not the time to upset the apple cart. I have been European Commission President for 5 years. Give me another 5. That would have been the main argument of continuity, of stability by Ursula von der Leyen, but there will be a challenge. She has more than a quarter of the MEPs in the European Parliament are from hard right and far right groups. They are not aligned with her on stuff like climate and Ukraine and migration. They want to see more on those issues. But her governing coalition is not aligned with that those far-right parties. So there will be more division, more combative nature in the European Parliament, but certainly in that powerful European Commission, that building behind me, the most powerful of the three institutions, more continuity, more stability, more Ursula von der Leyen.
You know, but that powerful building behind you, for the first time you would agree, Alex, that it has seen very consolidated and bolstered for a far-right faction, but the tensions that ran high as these odd 720 lawmakers voted in secret ballot. Finally, did this outcome come as a surprise?
The final outcome did not come as a surprise. I think if you spoke to people behind the scenes in Brussels, and certainly that was the impression I got, Ursula von der Leyen was going to get through the European parliamentary vote. That is not a surprise. What is perhaps surprising is that she did it with such a margin of 40 MEPs, much more than she did back in 2019. That was just a few votes over that got her across the line then. So we thought it was going to be tight. We thought it was going to be difficult. Turns out it was a lot easier than expected. That was a surprise. Ursula von der Leyen back at the Commission, perhaps a little bit less surprising.
Minus the support of the Italian Prime Minister again this time, but we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Alex, for joining us live on Brussels on our top story. Thank you. And from Brussels, shifting focus to US polls, where US President Joe Biden's re-election bid was mired in fresh turmoil after reports that top Democratic leaders had privately pushed him to end his campaign, while Donald Trump is all set to accept the Republican presidential nomination on Thursday. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have all expressed deep concerns directly to Biden in recent days that he will not only lose the White House but also cost the party any chance of winning back the U.S. House of Representatives in the November 5th elections, according to reports in multiple news outlets. 81-year-old Joe Biden has thus far refused to entertain any public calls from 20 congressional Democrats to step aside following a halting sort of performance at his June 27 debate against 78-year-old Trump, which gained international attention. His troubles were compounded on Wednesday again when he tested positive for COVID-19 during a campaign visit to Nevada, forcing him to return to Delaware home to work in isolation. Meanwhile, Trump will cap the 4-day Republican National Convention in Milwaukee with his first public address since he survived an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday, in which a bullet grazed his ear. Campaign staffers say the experience has prompted him to revise his acceptance speech to emphasize inclusiveness rather than attack on Biden's Democrats. Let's quickly go across to Nick Harper joining us live from Washington, D.C. Now, we are waiting to hear Donald Trump, that address post-assassination bid. This is not going to be his first appearance, but his first address. So what's the inside track, Nick? Nick, and when do we expect his address?
Well, we're still a little way off the address taking place. It's nearly midday here in the United States. That speech will happen at about 10 p.m. Eastern Time, so about 10 hours from now, but huge speculation over these intervening hours about what will be in that speech. The fact that he says he completely rewrote it suggests that we may see a very different Donald Trump speech to the type of speeches that we normally see. Now, the original speech was all about attacking Joe Biden, ridiculing his administration and pointing out all of the faults and problems over the last 3.5 years. This new one, we're told by Donald Trump himself, is all about unity. He says that he saw this as an opportunity to bring the whole country, even the whole world, together. So it might be a different tone from the one that we're used to from Donald Trump.
And talking about the Biden camp, we'll have to just wait till he actually comes up and addresses the gathering. But mounting pressure on President Biden to step aside, but troubles compounding more after a COVID positive report. A quick one from the Biden camp. Are we expecting any big surprises or big breaking news coming in the next few days?
Well, we could do. I mean, we're not expecting to hear from the president in any public way during the course of today. The White House has already said that there will be no events, no press briefings, no opportunity to hear or see from the president. He's at his home in Delaware today, where he will remain for the next few days, I guess, mulling over the fact that there are so many now within his party, including top Democrats, who are telling him to step aside. Now, it's unknown when he may come out and make remarks. It's unclear if he will remain in the race, as he said throughout he will, or whether he will bow to all of that pressure. We'll have to wait and see. But undoubtedly, those mounting calls, in particular from some of the biggest names within the Democratic Party, the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, when you have those type of people telling him that it's time to go, he would need to take those views very seriously, because they're saying that he is doing damage to the whole of the party and the possibility of senators, of congressmen getting re-elected in November by staying at the top of the ticket.
Right. We'll not really jump the gun till it's official. Thank you. But before I leave you, Nick, there's one more question. I mean, we would want to hear latest as far as the investigations are concerned. Now, Secret Service reportedly have agreed to testify in the Trump shooting case. And this is also coming amidst huge demands for the U.S. Secret Service boss to step down, pressure mounting on him to resign. Fill in with some more inputs, if at all, on the investigation front.
Yeah, Kim Cheetle, the director of the Secret Service, she has been called to testify on Monday before Congress. That's the House Oversight Committee that she'll be speaking before. A subpoena put out to compel her to turn up on Monday and to testify. The House Republicans really want to find out what happened. But that's just one of multiple investigations that are taking place. On Wednesday, the Homeland Security said that they would also be looking into this, trying to get to the bottom of what took place, but more videos emerging over the course of the last 24 hours that showed that the gunman was lurking around the scene for about an hour or so before the actual shooting. Those calls getting louder to really get to the bottom of it, but also for someone to take accountability.
Clearly putting the security agencies in huge scrutiny out there. Thank you very much, Nick Harper, for joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you. We're getting some news from neighboring Bangladesh now. Bangladesh continues to simmer, it seems, because Bangladesh's leading daily newspaper, Pratham Alo, has written or reported that there have been attacks on the Bangladesh television headquarters in Dhaka's Rampura area. Reportedly, a group of people entered the BTV headquarters, which is their national channel, by smashing the main gate in the afternoon. And other newspapers and TV channels have also confirmed the incident. Death toll, meanwhile, has risen substantially to 32, as per hospital reports. And mostly students have died in the violence. Our Dhaka correspondent Naval Sang Parmar and DD India's Sagnik Chakravarti have filed this report.
The situation in Bangladesh is getting from bad to worse. The toll is rising with every passing day. Hundreds of people are injured in fresh clashes between quota reform protesters and the police. The protesters snapped Dhaka's rail communication with the rest of the country and also paralyzed metro rail operations. The authorities have also snapped mobile and internet services on Thursday.
The biggest problem is we cannot move anywhere. Public transport has been closed. If we cannot move around freely, how can we continue our livelihood properly?
In view of the ongoing situation in Bangladesh, the Indian High Commission in Dhaka on Thursday issued an advisory for the Indian community members and the Indian students residing in Bangladesh to avoid local travel and to minimize their movement. The US Embassy in Dhaka also said that it would close on Thursday and advised its citizens to avoid demonstrations and large gatherings. The Law, Justice and Parliamentary Affairs Minister of Bangladesh, Anisul Haq, said that the government agrees in principle on quota reform and is ready to hold talks with the quota reform protesters. He said, and I quote, "The Prime Minister has given me and Education Minister Mohibul Hassan Chaudhry the responsibility to hold talks with them. We want to have talks with them whenever they want. If they want to hold talks today, we are ready to do this." The protesters on Wednesday called for a complete shutdown across the country and pushed for their demand on quota system in government jobs. The university students and teachers have been staging protests demanding quota reforms in government jobs since July 1. 6 people were killed and scores were injured on Tuesday amid alleged attacks by police and ruling party affiliated student organizations on protesters. The protests started in response to a verdict by the High Court on June 5, 2024. Which declared the 2018 government circular cancelling the 30% quota for freedom fighters' descendants in government jobs illegal. The circular was issued in wake of the 2018 Bangladesh quota reform movement. The nationwide protests are the biggest since Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was re-elected to a 4th term in office and are fueled by high unemployment among the youth, with nearly a fifth of the 170 million population out of work or education. With inputs from Naval Sang Parmar in Dhaka. Bureau Report, DD India.
In other news, a twice-a-decade conclave known as a Third Plenum has wrapped up in Beijing, with the ruling Chinese Communist Party pledging on Thursday to better manage the market economy through reforms, but offered no clear bombshells or outcomes. It also accepted the resignation of former Foreign Minister Qin Gang and removed him from the party's Central Committee. Laura Westbrook has more from Hong Kong.
In the communique released by state media, the Central Committee adopted a resolution on deepening reforms and advancing Chinese modernization. The Third Plenum also agreed to advance reforms on taxation and finance and stressed the need to tackle the risks in the property sector. We are expecting to get more details in the coming days and weeks, but investors had been watching very closely to see what came out of this communique to get an idea of what Chinese President Xi Jinping's vision for the economy was for the next few years. China is dealing with many challenges in its economy that has seen growth slow. That includes an embattled property crisis, as well as high youth unemployment, with many young people worried about their jobs, as well as weak consumer spending. So many eyes had been on this communique to see what detail it might provide, and it does appear to be doubling down on the strategy of self-reliance, science and technology, especially with Xi Jinping's new productive forces policy that essentially is a policy that focuses on high-end industries and high-end manufacturing to ensure that China has technological self-reliance and doesn't have to rely on other countries like the US who might block it from accessing technology. It appears that China is very much doubling down on this export-driven growth strategy, and that has the potential to exacerbate trade tensions with the United States and with the European Union, who have accused China of overcapacity, of using cheap Chinese goods to flood overseas markets. In Hong Kong, Laura Westbrook reporting for DD India.
The European Central Bank has kept interest rates unchanged at 3.75% on Thursday. The ECB's President Christine Lagarde said a move in September was wide open, with domestic inflation still stubbornly high and wage growth very sticky. The bank is likely to be more cautious about a blow-up step. Lagarde said that high interest rates could hit activity harder than expected. The UNICEF report has presented a very flawed comparison of India's immunization data with other countries. The report claimed that India is grappling with the challenge of ensuring essential vaccination to every child against diseases. On the contrary, the government of India has dedicatedly worked to vaccinate its citizens. Now take a look at these numbers. As a percentage of the total population, zero-dose children account for 0.11% of the country's total population. Given the large population size of India, it has the highest number of vaccinated children across the countries. Full immunization coverage of the country for the year 2023-24 stands at 93.23%. India's immunization program is the largest public health initiative globally, which targets a massive cohort of 2.6 crore children and 2.9 crore pregnant women. Under Mission Indradhanush, 5.46 crore children and 1.32 crore pregnant women have been vaccinated till 2023. And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. India's top court directs National Testing Agency to publish NEET undergraduate exam results by July 20th. The book titled Wings to Our Hopes, Volume 1 on India's President Murmu's selected speeches released.
While there's still enough food for everyone on the planet, food shortages are a real problem. Let's take a look at the factors causing this and what can be done to save our food.
What we host now, it's called Farm School. One of the goals is to teach them agriculture so that 50 years from now, when there's so much change in climate, they don't have to deal with learning two new skills.
We empower women who are really poor and who don't have too much economic empowerment to eat better.
We adopt this strategy in our product. The volatile compounds induce the defence mechanism and help to prolong shelf life by 2 more days. So it's purely natural.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and before we move ahead, let's do a quick recap of the headlines at this hour on DD India News Hour. Ursula von der Leyen wins second term as EU Commission President, pledges to strengthen the EU economy, police and border agencies, tackle migration and climate change. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls for deeper cooperation on Ukraine and Europe's problems at a meeting of the European political community of more than 40 nations at Buckingham Palace, distances himself from the previous Conservative government. Massive protests over quota in government jobs rock neighbouring Bangladesh. Government shuts down mobile internet. India issues an advisory, asks students in Dhaka to avoid local travel and minimise movement. Well, going back to our top story on the European Parliament, which has re-elected Ursula von der Leyen for another 5 years as European Commission boss, choosing continuity for the EU's most powerful institution and bloc. And for the first time, European Parliament elections were also held with a very consolidated far-right support, with tensions which ran high throughout the weeks and months running to the election. So, Ursula von der Leyen's future also at one point in time hung in balance. What led to this turnaround of game for her, and what does this mean for Europe as a whole amidst big political churn that we are seeing across Europe? And we are joined by Professor Greg Simon. He's Professor Greg Simon joining us live from Sweden. He handles Eurasian and Russian studies in Uppsala University in Sweden. Professor Simon, it's such a pleasure having you on our show on DD India. Thank you very much. Now, we have seen in the weeks and months leading up to the vote, some centrist lawmakers said that they will not vote for her, forcing her to look for support elsewhere or outside her current coalition, including among the left-leaning Greens, which, by the way, did their job. How do you think this vote has come through, and what does this really mean for the bloc? Is this win on expected lines finally?
Well, I think for many this is expected because she's a representative of the mainstream political establishment. And if we look, there was some kind of talk about finding an alternative, but like many of these national elections, there is no reasonable alternative, so it's put. But I think this is going to cause a number of problems because under her watch, she's exceeded her authority and overseen some pretty, I would say, controversial things, such as the contract for the COVID vaccine and also the mass migration issue, amongst other things.
Having said that, as we do know that the war rages nearly on the Europe's doorsteps, the bloc faces multiple challenges, some of you just spelled out. That also leaves leaders to deal with these issues head on post these elections. Is this going to be difficult or challenging for her to keep the flock together, considering there is no letdown in tensions between Russia and Ukraine?
I don't think she will keep it together because it's been going 2 years already, the Ukraine war, and you can see the splits. I mean, if we look at Orban, who is one of the very few politicians who has national interest at heart, went to Kiev, went to Moscow and Beijing to seek some kind of diplomatic level way out of this. She represents, I mean, von der Leyen, if we want to put it plainly, interests of Washington. So, I mean, she's been towing the Washington line. There is no European geostrategic interest here. It's working for someone else. And I think this is what is going to bring her down because you've got deindustrialization, inflation, and all of these other issues which affect the average person. And she's very far removed from the experiences of the average European citizen.
Okay, that's an interesting point that you're making, but Orban has been at the receiving end of a lot of flack for his, many would call it a self-styled peace mission, a stopover in Moscow and then in Beijing also. But at the end of the day, this vote is also being seen as a strong case for continuity and stability amidst the current political churn. Your comments on that?
Well, Orban never said he represented the EU. He said he represented Hungary. So this was national interest and not this pan-European, or one can even say US interest. And if we look, I mean, this is splitting more because you got Fico from Slovakia as well. So you're getting this increasing split. And I mean, von der Leyen, she is, I don't see how she's going to hold it together. We had that Polish representative of the European Parliament who openly criticised her and gave a lot of harsh critique. So, I mean, there are things boiling under the surface which are going to come out at some stage.
Okay, interesting. But there has also been a very intense build-up, Professor Simon, for the way she has offered some policy priority shifts based on her closed-door conversations reportedly with European Parliament members in the last few weeks. Is there more to it that meets the eye?
Well, I don't think she has been that successful. She has been predictable.
But she got the numbers.
Yes.
Better than last time.
This is what I'm saying. She has the numbers with the political establishment elite. She does not have the numbers at the popular level. And if we look at it bluntly, and more people are saying this on the street, she's not elected by popular vote.
Okay.
And I mean, this is causing this reaction against the EU itself. I mean, you're getting this kind of reaction. I mean, people are starting to refer to the EU on the popular level in a frustration as the EU SSR, this kind of monstrous bureaucratic machine which is out of touch with the people.
Okay. Climate action was front and center of von der Leyen's bid for the first term in 2019, if you remember. But several left-leaning groups also made their support this time around contingent on a very firm commitment to the EU's existing climate targets. Do you think that's going to be the rallying points, rather one of the rallying points? She has to walk the talk on climate.
Well, I mean, she has a problem because if you look at Germany, for example, her home country, I mean, they're having these green politics, and that's decimating the economy. And I mean, this is coming at a time we're having increased unemployment, deindustrialization, and things like this. People are starting to get rather fatigued by this climate because, I mean, if we look at liberal democracy now in Europe, it's much more focused on the ideology of liberalism in a rather messianic and kind of way, and ignoring the aspect of democracy. So it's pushing things through. And I mean, you might have some level of consensus at the political elite, but the political elite, of course, at times are going to be at least somewhat beholden during election periods to the popular vote.
Okay. Final question. Do you see also this as a platform which centered mostly around boosting competitiveness versus US, China, Russia, Ukraine, all of that?
Well, alas, I mean, I don't see the EU as pursuing its independent policy, global policy. It's more supportive of the US policy. I mean, if we look at the strategic issues, the EU never diverges from the Washington line. And of course, this is making it less competitive because it's breaking trade ties, it's interrupting all of these things that earlier made it more competitive. Because if we look about 5-6 years ago, the combined GDP of the EU countries was 5% more than the US, and now it's well below 50% less.
Okay.
So, I mean, you have huge problems.
Okay, we'll have to see how the second term really goes for her. Meanwhile, Professor Simon, thank you so much for joining us live from Sweden on this big and lead story on DD India.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's shift our focus to some stories coming in from India now. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived at the New Delhi's headquarters of the world's largest political party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, this evening. He interacted with the hardworking party functionaries based there, marking his first extensive interaction with them since his historic re-election. The meeting was a way to express gratitude for their dedicated efforts in the BJP's road to success. BJP's National President JP Nadda and other senior party office bearers were also present on the occasion. The book titled Wings to Our Hopes, Volume 1 is a compilation of selected speeches by President of India Draupadi Murmu, which was launched at Rashtrapati Bhavan complex in New Delhi on Thursday. India's Minister for Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare, Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan, released the English and Hindi versions of the book, along with the e-versions in the presence of Minister of State for Information and Broadcasting, Dr. L. Murugan, and Secretary Information and Broadcasting, Sanjay Jaju. Two other books titled Kahani Rashtrapati Bhavan Ki and Rashtrapati Bhavan Heritage Meets the Present were also released. India's Home Minister Amit Shah launched the National Anti-Narcotics Helpline or MANAS and virtually inaugurated Narcotics Control Bureau Zonal Office at Srinagar. Under MANAS, there will be 24/7 toll-free numbers, 1933, a web portal and mobile app for citizens to share information on drug trafficking, smuggling. On these helplines, the identity of the informer and the information given will be kept completely confidential. A person can connect with National Narcotics Bureau to seek counselling on rehabilitation as well. Addressing the 7th NCORD top-level meeting, Amit Shah, the Home Minister, said that under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the fight against drugs is being carried out in a very serious manner.
19 से 24 की लड़ाई में हमने हमारे काम का 1/10 ही अचीव किया है, परंतु साच अर्थ में लड़ाई अब शुरू हो रही है और ये लड़ाई में जब तक 35 के नीचे का हर देश का नागरिक लड़ाई लड़ने का संकल्प करे.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news. At least 2 people killed and over 8 injured in India when Dibrugarh-Chandigarh express train derailed in North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The state disaster response force reached the spot and started evacuating passengers. The train Dibrugarh-Chandigarh express connects India's northeastern states to the northeastern state of Assam. The Supreme Court on Thursday instructed the National Testing Agency to announce the city and centre-wise results of NEET undergraduate 2024 exams by noon on July 20th, ensuring the identities of the aspirants are hidden. The court will continue hearing arguments on July 22nd regarding multiple petitions calling for cancellation, retest and court-monitored investigation into alleged widespread malpractices in the NEET undergraduate exam held on May 5th earlier. 2 terrorists were neutralized as security forces foiled an infiltration bid along the LOC in India's Jammu and Kashmir's Kupwara district on Thursday. Indian Army wrote on platform X that the exchange of fire started after security forces including 6 Rashtriya Rifle and Kupwara police have received input of infiltration in the Karen sector, following which operation was started. Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Girish Chandra Murmu, on Thursday inaugurated the International Centre for Audit of Local Governance in Rajkot in Gujarat. The objective of the centre is to enhance the audit capacity and self-reliance of the local government auditors. Sri Jagannath Temple Administration on Thursday reopened the inner chamber of the Ratna Bhandar as per the SOP prescribed by the government to transfer ornaments to a temporary storeroom set up within the 12th century shrine complex 4 days after it was opened after a gap of 46 years for inventory and repairs. And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. Weather update, flood-like situation in eastern part of India, whereas Spain, Serbia face heat waves. Newly crowned European champions Spain jumped to 3rd position with Copa America winners Argentina stay at the top in the latest FIFA rankings. Canada head swim coach questions processes in Chinese doping case review.
As the world gears up for the biggest sporting extravaganza, Olympics 2024, we at DD India are all set to bring you reports, reactions and all the latest action from Ground Zero. Watch DD India's super exclusive show, Cheer for Bharat. Only on DD India from July the 22nd at 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT. Get ready to cheer for Indian athletes at the Paris Olympics 2024.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Let's move on to some situation, the flood situation in the northeast Indian state of Assam, where there is improvement in the flood situation, to down south Kerala, where heavy rains continue to lash the northern parts of the state. The next report tells how the flood situation is across the country.
Several states across India are in the grip of floods. The flood situation in the northeastern state of Assam continued to improve as water level across the state was receding. The local Met Office in Guwahati predicted no rains for the next 2 days, giving hope for faster enhancement in the condition. Meanwhile, a report from the Assam State Disaster Management Authority said that the number of people reeling under the deluge decreased to around 400,000, even as one more death was reported from Dhemaji. The number of inundated districts reduced to 16. Some of the major affected districts are Kachar, Golaghat, Gwalpada, Nagaon. Presently, 15,000 inmates are taking shelter in 122 relief camps across the state. Moving to the southern Indian state of Kerala, where heavy rainfall continuing to lash northern Kerala as red alert has been declared in districts of Wayanad, Kannur and Kasargod by the Met Office. 7 other districts in Kerala have issued orange alert indicating heavy rainfall. Considering the orange alert on Friday too, Kannur and Kasargod district authorities have declared holiday for all educational institutions in respective districts. 8 casualties have been officially reported in last 3 days in various rain-related incidents. Meanwhile, at least 6 people died in a landslide triggered by torrential rains in southern Indian state of Karnataka's Uttara Kannada district. Rescue personnel were seen clearing eroded soil, rocks and debris off the national highway, while search operations for the missing people continued in the district. About 8 to 10 people were still reported missing as disaster management officials said they were facing difficulties in search operations due to incessant rains. As a low-pressure area has already emerged in the northern Bay of Bengal, and considering the existence of cyclonic circulation in northeast Arabian Sea and low-pressure trough extending from Kerala to Gujarat, the monsoon activity is expected to continue strongly at least till 30th July. Bureau Report, DD India.
Staying with weather conditions, Spanish weather authorities have warned the residents to beware of the first heat wave of the season. The weather department expects the temperatures to rise beyond 38 degrees Celsius. Well, that's Spain for you. And over in California, the wildfires at the Sequoia National Forest in California's Tulare County are spreading at an alarming rate. One of the fires near Josendale has burned 7,582 acres of land, and the dry weather and extreme temperatures have worsened the wildfires at different locations throughout the United States. And in Serbia, the temperatures are breaking records, with most of the central and southern Europe suffering due to extended heat wave. The Rosanda Salt Lake of Serbia dried up due to extreme heat conditions, while capital Belgrade recorded warmest temperature of 40 degrees Celsius. In celebration of Nelson Mandela's 106th birth anniversary, the Gandhi Mandela Foundation, in partnership with the United Service Institution, commemorated Nelson Mandela Day. The speakers addressed distinguished gathering on the ideals and principles of Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, highlighting their relevance in contemporary times to foster the spirit of the global peace and harmony.
It has been declared as the International Day of Nelson Mandela. That's a great thing. Otherwise also, throughout then when he was incarcerated, he was behind the bars, the whole world was celebrating his life, and they had so much expectations from Nelson Mandela that once he comes out, he's going to make our life, make our dreams come true. The life of Nelson Mandela reinforces our belief that Gandhi was right, because you need such disciples, you need some people to walk that path. How else will you prove that Gandhi was right? What Gandhi was saying, the path that was forged by him, the action that Gandhi took.
Well, you're watching DD India News Hour. It's now time for some sports news. Well, we first talk about cricket, with the BCCI selection committee has announced India's squad for the upcoming white ball series against Sri Lanka on Thursday. Suryakumar Yadav has been named India's new T20 skipper after Rohit Sharma decided to retire from the shortest format after the T20 World Cup 2024 win last month. Both Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli are included in the ODI squad as India kicks off their early preparations for the next year's ICC Champions Trophy. And in major changes, KL Rahul and Shreyas Iyer returned to the white ball cricket for the first time in 2024. Senior cricketers like Hardik Pandya, Rishabh Pant, Mohammad Siraj, Arshdeep Singh and Akshar Patel all have returned to the T20 setup. Jasprit Bumrah has been rested for the series. Newly crowned European champions Spain have risen 5 places to third in the latest FIFA Rankings, which was published on Thursday. Spain won a record 4th Euro title and their first major trophy in 10 years after a 2-1 win over England in Sunday's final. Also, World Cup winners Argentina held on to the top spot following their Copa America triumph, beating Colombia 1-0. Meanwhile, England moved up 1 place to 4th, leapfrogging Brazil after their underwhelming Copa America campaign. On the other hand, Venezuela, who reached the Copa America quarters, were the most improved side in the rankings, rising 17 places to 37th with Euro quarterfinals. Turkey jumping to 16 places to 26th. Meanwhile, the Indian football team has dropped down 3 places in the latest FIFA rankings. India are now ranked 22nd in Asia and 124th in the world. Swimming Canada High Performance Director and National Coach John Atkinson has questioned whether the processes involved in the reviews like that of the Chinese doping cases are right, opposed to the processes simply being followed even if flawed. On July 9th, an independent investigation found that the World Anti-Doping Agency did not mishandle or show favoritism in the case of 23 Chinese swimmers who tested positive for banned substances and were cleared to compete in the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. A report by Swiss prosecutor and lead investigator Eric Cottier found there was nothing in the file to suggest WADA in any way favoured the 23 swimmers who tested positive for trimetazidine. Well, that's all for you in this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.